I was sitting in my penthouse in Marina del Rey, watching the sunrise paint the Pacific Ocean in shades of gold and amber, when my phone rang at 6 in the morning. It was Marcus, the building's security guard, and his voice had that edge of panic that makes your heart skip a beat. "Miss Whitmore," he said, barely keeping his composure. "Your son's fiancée is here. She's got movers with her, and she's claiming she owns your penthouse. She says she has legal documents." I took a slow sip of my jasmine tea and smiled. Not a happy smile, but the kind of smile you wear when you've been 3 moves ahead in a chess game that your opponent doesn't even know they're playing. "Let her in, Marcus," I said calmly. "Let them all in. She's about to learn something very important today." How can a 70-year-old woman sit there drinking tea while someone tries to steal her home? Let me tell you something I learned in my 45 years as a forensic accountant. Panic is the enemy of strategy. And I had a strategy. I'd been building it for months, piece by careful piece. But before I tell you how that morning unfolded, you need to understand how I got here. Because this isn't just a story about revenge. This is a story about a mother who loved too much, trusted too easily, and finally learned that sometimes the cruelest lessons teach us the most important truths. My name is Victoria Whitmore. I'm 70 years old, and I've spent my entire adult life tracking other people's money. For 45 years, I worked as a forensic accountant, the person companies call when they suspect someone's stealing from them. I found embezzlers, fraudsters, people who thought they were smart enough to hide their tracks. I always found the tracks. Always. I bought this penthouse 15 years ago, with money I saved over decades of living modestly. 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, a rooftop terrace where I grow herbs and watch the sailboats drift by. Current value, $8.2 million. I also own a townhouse in Pasadena, where I raised my son, worth $3.6 million, and a rental property in Silver Lake that brings in $6,000 a month. Total assets, including investments and savings, just over $16 million. Not bad for a woman who started her career making $1,200 a month as a junior accountant, who was widowed at 55 and raised a teenage son alone. That morning, as I heard the elevator doors open and footsteps echo through my foyer, I remembered the exact moment I should have seen the warning signs. But mothers, we don't want to see the truth when it comes to our children. We want to believe in the goodness of their choices, even when every instinct screams at us to look closer. My son, Alexander, is 45 years old. He works as an architect for a prestigious firm downtown. He makes good money, over $200,000 a year. But Alexander never had a head for finances. He was always creative, always dreaming, always trusting that things would work out. His father, Jonathan, was the same way. Beautiful soul, terrible with money. 6 years ago, Alexander met Natasha Reynolds at a gallery opening in West Hollywood. She was 33 then, stunning in that effortless way some women have, with sleek dark hair, green eyes that could cut through steel, and a wardrobe that screamed money, even though I would later learn she didn't have a penny to her name. She told us she worked in fashion consulting. I never saw her consult on anything, except how to spend my son's money. At first, I wanted to like her. I truly did. When Alexander brought her to Sunday dinner at my townhouse, Natasha brought expensive wine and complimented my cooking. She asked about my career, seemed fascinated by my stories about catching white-collar criminals. She called me Victoria, not Mrs. Whitmore, which I appreciated. She felt modern, sophisticated, exactly the kind of woman I thought my son needed after his painful divorce from his first wife. But I'm a forensic accountant. I'm trained to see patterns, and the patterns I saw with Natasha made my skin crawl. She asked too many questions about my properties. How much had I paid for the penthouse? What was it worth now? Did I have a mortgage? What about the other properties? Every question came wrapped in concern, as if she was worried about my ability to manage such a complex financial portfolio at my age. At my age, as if 70 meant I'd suddenly forgotten how numbers work. I watched her scan my home every time she visited. Her eyes calculating, pricing, cataloging. I saw how she whispered to Alexander in corners. How he started avoiding my calls, how our weekly dinners became monthly, then quarterly. The real alarm bells started ringing about 3 years ago at Alexander's birthday dinner. Natasha brought up estate planning like it was casual dinner conversation. Victoria, Alexander told me you have 3 properties. Have you thought about the estate tax implications? California's rates are brutal. You could lose almost half if you don't plan properly. She swirled her wine, looking at me with those green eyes. It might be smarter to gift the properties now while you're still healthy. That way Alexander gets them tax-free, and you don't have to worry about managing everything. At my age, at 70, as if I was one fall away from a nursing home. Everything is in a living trust, I said. I'm the sole beneficiary during my lifetime. Upon my death, the assets transfer to Alexander directly, avoiding probate and minimizing taxes. My attorney set it up 20 years ago. I watched Natasha's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. If I hadn't been looking for it, I would have missed it. Of course, she said smoothly. But trusts can be modified, updated, especially if circumstances change. That night, after they left, I cried. Not because of Natasha, but because my son sat there silent, letting his fiancée interrogate me about my assets, as if I was an obstacle to his inheritance, rather than his mother. But I dried my tears. I've survived worse than a gold digger. I survived burying my husband. I survived raising a teenager alone, while building a career in a male-dominated field. I survived audits of billion-dollar companies where men twice my size tried to intimidate me. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community, so we can bring more truthful stories for you. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. First, to my attorney, Catherine Chen. Catherine and I had worked together for 15 years. She's brilliant, ruthless when she needs to be, and she understands that the law is both a shield and a sword. Catherine, I need you to review my trust documents and my estate plan. I also need you to make sure everything is bulletproof. I think someone close to me might try to challenge my competency. Second, to my physician, Dr. Pierre, Sarah Martinez. She's been my doctor for 25 years. Sarah, I need complete cognitive testing, memory, reasoning, decision-making, everything. I need documentation that I'm of sound mind, dated and certified. Third, to a private investigator whose card had been sitting in my desk drawer for 2 years. A friend had given it to me after he'd used the man's services in a corporate espionage case. Mr. Okonkwo, my name is Victoria Whitmore, and I need to know everything about someone. Every debt, every lie, every skeleton in every closet. The cognitive testing came back perfect. At 70, I had the mental acuity of someone 20 years younger. Martinez gave me certified documents proving I was completely competent to manage my affairs. Taiwo Okonkwo, the private investigator, took 4 weeks and $8,000. What he found made my blood run cold. Natasha Reynolds wasn't even her real name. She was born Natasha Kowalski in Phoenix. She'd been married twice before. The first marriage, when she was 24, was to a recently widowed real estate developer in Scottsdale. That marriage lasted 11 months. It ended when the man's adult children discovered she'd convinced their father to add her to several property deeds. They threatened legal action. She walked away with a $150,000 settlement. The second marriage, to a tech entrepreneur in San Jose, lasted even less time. That one ended when her husband discovered she'd opened credit cards in his name and racked up $90,000 in charges. She disappeared before he could press charges, and he apparently decided it was cheaper to eat the loss than pursue her across state lines. Between marriages, she'd had relationships with several older men, always wealthy, always recently widowed or divorced. The pattern was always the same. Charm them, isolate them from family, convince them to update their estate planning, then disappear with whatever she could grab. She had debts, massive debts, credit cards totaling over $100,000, personal loans from predatory lenders, another $60,000. A tax lien from the IRS for unpaid income taxes, $47,000. She was drowning, and my son was her life raft. The text messages Taiwo recovered from a source he wouldn't name made me physically ill. The old bat won't budge on the properties, but I've got a plan. Alexander is putty in my hands. I'll convince her she's losing her mind, get power of attorney, and drain everything before she knows what's happening. This ring better be worth it. Another message. To her sister. Alexander is so boring I could scream, but his mother has $16 million in assets. $16 million, Rachel. I just need her to gift me one property, sell it, pay off my debts, and disappear. I'm not waiting for her to die. I'll be 50 by then. And the most damning, found a guy who'll forge whatever documents I need. Costs 10 grand, but it'll be worth it. Once I have the penthouse deed in my name, I can take out a loan against it, get liquid cash, and vanish before anyone figures it out. I sat in Taiwo's office, reading these messages on his laptop, and felt something inside me harden into steel. Is this admissible in court? I asked. For a civil case, absolutely. For criminal charges, probably. Depends on how the prosecutor wants to play it. And the forger? Guy named Derek Hansen. Disbarred attorney. Got caught creating fake trust documents 5 years ago. Still operating, though, under the radar. I took copies of everything. I paid Taiwo another $5,000 to keep watching, keep gathering evidence. Then I waited. I'm a forensic accountant. I know that criminals always make mistakes. They get greedy, they get confident, and they get sloppy. Natasha would make her move eventually, and when she did, I'd be ready. The next few months were agony. I had to smile when Natasha came to visit, had to listen to her subtle digs about my age, my memory, my ability to manage my affairs. She started staging little interventions. She'd come to dinner with Alexander and casually mention that I'd told her something I hadn't told her. Remember last week when you said you were having trouble with your online banking? I found a great financial advisor who specializes in helping seniors manage their accounts. I'll never said anything about online banking. I've been managing my accounts perfectly for 50 years. Or she'd bring up an appointment I supposedly forgot. Victoria, weren't you supposed to meet Catherine yesterday? Alexander told me you completely forgot about it and she had to reschedule. Catherine and I hadn't scheduled anything. She was building a narrative, creating witnesses to my supposed cognitive decline. It was textbook financial elder abuse. And it was exactly what I'd seen dozens of times in my career. The breaking point came 8 months ago. Natasha organized a dinner at an upscale restaurant in Beverly Hills. She told me it was a small family gathering to celebrate their engagement anniversary. When I arrived, I found 15 people at the table. Natasha's parents, her sister Rachel, 2 couples I'd never met, and several of Alexander's colleagues. I should have known something was wrong when Alexander wouldn't meet my eyes. Halfway through dinner, Natasha stood up with her wine glass. Family is so important, which is why I'm concerned about someone I consider family. My stomach dropped. Victoria has been like a mother to me, Natasha continued, her voice dripping with false concern. Which is why it breaks my heart to see her struggling. We've all noticed she's been forgetting things, getting confused about dates and appointments. Last week she called Alexander 3 times asking the same question. I never called Alexander 3 times. I'd barely spoken to him in weeks. Memory loss is nothing to be ashamed of, one of the strangers chimed in. I later learned he was an attorney Natasha had specifically invited. My father had dementia. It started exactly like this, small things at first. The important thing, Natasha continued, is to make sure Victoria is protected. Alexander and I think it's time to establish a conservatorship. For her own safety. The word hit me like a physical blow. Conservatorship. Legal control over my finances, my property, my life. I stood up. Every eye turned to me. I am 70 years old, not 7. I am not confused. I do not need a conservatorship. What I need is for people to stop treating me like I'm incompetent, simply because I've lived long enough to know better than to trust everyone who smiles at me." Natasha's face flickered with something ugly before the mask of concern returned. "You see? Defensive behavior, paranoia. These are classic signs. I left that restaurant with whatever dignity I could salvage. I sat in my car in the parking lot and shook with rage and humiliation. But by the time I got home, the rage had crystallized into something colder and infinitely more dangerous. The next morning, I called Catherine. She made her move. Now we make ours. Catherine had been quietly preparing for this. I've already drafted an updated trust document, a healthcare directive, and a durable power of attorney. Everything specifies that you are of sound mind and explicitly excludes Natasha Reynolds, also known as Natasha Kowalski, from any access to your assets. We'll have it notarized by 3 different witnesses, all respected professionals. If she tries to claim incompetency, we'll bury her in documentation. Good. What else? If she continues to publicly defame you by claiming you're mentally incompetent, we'll sue for defamation. With the evidence Taiwo gathered, we can prove malicious intent. Save that for now. I want her to think she's winning." 3 weeks later, Natasha made her final fatal mistake. She came to my penthouse with Derek Hansen, the disbarred attorney. He was exactly what I expected. Cheap suit, false confidence, eyes that couldn't hold contact for more than a second. "Victoria, this is Mr. Hansen. He specializes in estate planning for seniors. Alexander and I thought it would be helpful for you to review your trust documents, make sure everything is updated." I had cameras installed the week before. Tiny things, invisible, unless you knew where to look. Every word, every gesture was being recorded. Hansen spread documents across my dining table, official-looking papers with seals and signatures and dense legal language designed to confuse. "Mrs. Whitmore, these documents simply update your trust to reflect current tax laws. We're making sure your son receives maximum benefit with minimum tax burden. All you need to do is sign here, here, and here." I read every word, slowly, carefully, and there it was, buried on page 5. "The grantor hereby irrevocably transfers full title and ownership of the property located at 13755 Marina Point Drive, Marina del Rey, to Natasha Marie Reynolds, who accepts said transfer in this act." Not a trust update, a property deed transfer. She was trying to steal my home. "This says I'm giving you my penthouse," I said, pointing to the paragraph. Hansen shifted uncomfortably. "Well, yes, technically, but it's a strategic estate planning move. The tax savings will be substantial." "And who pays the taxes on this gift?" "The IRS considers property transfers taxable events." Natasha jumped in smoothly. "We'll handle all of that, Victoria. You don't need to worry about the complicated stuff." I looked at Hansen. "May I see your state bar number?" The color drained from his face. He fumbled with his briefcase. "Of course, it's right here somewhere." He showed me an ID card. I photographed it with my phone, pretending I needed better light to read it. "Everything seems to be in order," I said in my most elderly, confused voice. "Where do I sign?" I signed every page, every initial, every signature line. Natasha could barely contain her glee. Her eyes were shining with victory. "Thank you so much, Victoria. You're making things so much easier for Alexander, for all of us." The moment they left, I called Catherine. "I just signed fraudulent documents transferring my penthouse to Natasha. I have everything recorded. Video, audio, photographs of Hansen's fake credentials. What's next? The moment she attempts to file them or leverage them for a loan, we have her for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. I'm calling the district attorney's office now." 4 weeks later, the fake documents arrived by courier. Perfect forgeries, complete with official-looking seals and recording stamps. If I hadn't known they were fake, I might have believed them myself. Natasha called me that afternoon. "Victoria, the paperwork went through. Everything's finalized. Alexander and I were thinking we might spend next weekend at the Penthouse. You know, Start getting familiar with the place since we'll be taking care of it for you. Of course, dear, I said sweetly. Come anytime. I'll be in Pasadena this weekend anyway. I wouldn't be in Pasadena. I'd be in Marina del Rey, waiting. That Friday morning, I woke at 5 a.m. I made my jasmine tea, wrapped myself in my mother's silk shawl, the one she brought from her home in Kerala before she immigrated, and I sat on my terrace, watching the darkness slowly give way to dawn. At exactly 6 o'clock, my phone rang. Marcus, security. And that's when I told him to let Natasha in, to let them all in. I heard the elevator, heard voices, heard the sharp click of expensive heels on my hardwood floors. I stayed on the terrace, sipping my tea, breathing in the salt air. Start with the master bedroom, I heard Natasha's voice, loud and commanding. The bed is custom made, probably worth $15,000. The dresser is antique. Be careful with it. She was already selling my furniture in her mind. Natasha was standing in my living room with 3 movers, all of them looking uncomfortable. One of them, a young man with a shaved head, kept glancing at the door like he wanted to run. Natasha, I said calmly. What a surprise. She turned, and for a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Uncertainty. But it vanished quickly, replaced by that false concern I knew so well. Victoria, I didn't know you'd be here. I thought you were in Pasadena. I changed my mind. My home is here. Why would I leave? She laughed, a brittle sound. Victoria, remember? We talked about this. The penthouse is mine now. You signed the transfer documents. It's all legal. Is it? I tilted my head. That's interesting. Ma'am, do you have proof of ownership? Because if this is disputed, we can't move anything. We could be liable for theft. Natasha pulled out her folder, the one with the fake documents. It's all here. Signed, sealed, recorded with the county. Mrs. Whitmore gifted me this property last month. Let me see those, the mover said, reaching for the papers. That's when my doorbell rang. I walked to the door, opened it. Catherine Chen walked in first, carrying her leather briefcase. Behind her, Taiwo Okonkwo, with his box of files. And behind them, 2 people who made Natasha stumble backward. Detective Lisa Rodriguez and Detective James Park from the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Economic Crimes Division. Good morning, Detective Rodriguez said, showing her badge. Ms. Reynolds, I presume? Natasha's face went from tan to gray in seconds. What is this? Catherine said, setting her briefcase on my dining table with a sharp thud. Is what happens when you try to defraud a forensic accountant. Let me tell you what happened next. But first I need to tell you what I've been doing for the past 4 weeks while waiting for this moment. After Natasha left with the fake documents, I didn't just sit around. I worked. I did what I do best. I followed the money. I hired a second investigator, a woman named Sarah Chen, who specializes in financial fraud. Between her and Taiwo, we traced every dollar Natasha had spent in the past 6 years. We found that she'd been systematically draining Alexander's accounts, personal loans he didn't know he'd co-signed for, totaling $65,000. Credit cards opened in his name, another $48,000. She'd even convinced him to take out a home equity line of credit on the townhouse I'd gifted him when he turned 30, borrowing $120,000 against it. My son was nearly $250,000 in debt, and he had no idea. We found the payments to Derek Hansen, $10,000 for the fake property transfer documents, another $15,000 for what appeared to be forged trust amendments that she was planning to use later. We found the conversations with her sister Rachel, planning the entire scam step by step. Once I get the penthouse in my name, I'll take out a loan against it. $3 million, cash out easy. Then I file for divorce, claim Alexander was abusive, and disappear. By the time anyone figures it out, I'll be in Costa Rica with a new name. She was planning to destroy my son's life and vanish. We also found something else. Natasha had a gambling problem. Online poker, sports betting, casino trips to Las Vegas, that Alexander thought were girls' weekends. She'd lost over $200,000 in the past 3 years alone. The evidence was overwhelming. Catherine presented it all to the district attorney's office. They opened a criminal investigation. Now, standing in my living room with detectives present, I watched as Natasha tried to maintain her composure. "These documents are legal," she insisted, waving the fake papers. "Victoria signed them willingly. I have witnesses." Detective Rodriguez took the documents, examined them. "These look official. Very professional. Must have cost a lot to create." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Derek Hansen," Detective Park said. "Ring a bell?" "Disbarred attorney, currently under investigation for creating fraudulent legal documents. We've been watching him for 6 months. You paid him $25,000 over the past 2 months. We have the bank transfers." Natasha's hand trembled. "I hired an attorney to help with estate planning. That's not illegal." "It is when that attorney isn't licensed to practice law," Catherine interjected. "It's also illegal when those documents are forged, when they're used to fraudulently transfer property, and when you conspire to do it." Taiwo opened his laptop, connected it to my television. "Reynolds, is this you?" He played the recording from the day she and Hansen came to my penthouse. Every word, every lie. The part where Hansen assured me I was just updating my trust. The part where Natasha told me not to worry about the complicated stuff. And the most damning part, recorded as they waited for the elevator after leaving, where Natasha said to Hansen, "The old fool bought it completely. How long before we can cash out?" Hansen's response, "I'll create a fake lien against the property, show that the bank approved a $3 million loan against it. You can get the money within 2 weeks. Just make sure she doesn't talk to her real attorney." Natasha's face crumpled. "That's not. You can't record people without their permission. That's illegal." "Actually," Catherine said with a cold smile, "California is a 2-party consent state for recordings, but that law doesn't apply when there's reasonable suspicion of a felony being committed. Mrs. Whitmore had substantial evidence that you were planning to defraud her. The recording is completely admissible." Detective Rodriguez took out her handcuffs. "Natasha Reynolds, also known as Natasha Kowalski, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, grand theft, forgery, and elder abuse. You have the right to remain silent." "Elder abuse?" Natasha's voice went shrill. "She's not even sick. Look at her. She's fine." "Elder abuse includes financial exploitation of anyone over 65, Detective Park explained. "Given your systematic attempts to isolate Whitmore from her son, your public accusations of dementia when medical records show she's perfectly competent, and your conspiracy to steal her property, the charges definitely apply." As the detectives handcuffed her, Natasha tried one more card. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "Victoria, please, think about Alexander. If you do this, you'll destroy him. Is that what you want? To destroy your own son?" I walked closer to her, looked directly into those green eyes that had fooled me for so long. "You already destroyed my son. You put him hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. You isolated him from me. You were planning to frame him for domestic abuse and disappear with millions of dollars stolen from his family. I'm not destroying Alexander. I'm saving him." Natasha had no response. The movers were already backing toward the door. The young one with the shaved head spoke up. "Ma'am, we're so sorry. She showed us documents, said it was all legal. We didn't know." "You're not responsible," I assured him. "You were lied to, just like everyone else." They left quickly, probably grateful to escape the situation. Catherine pulled out another set of documents. "Victoria, these are the real property deeds, filed with the county recorder, in your name, as they've always been. The trust documents showing you as the sole beneficiary during your lifetime. And these," she held up a thick folder, "are the criminal complaints we're filing against Miss Reynolds. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, elder abuse, and identity theft for the credit cards she opened in Alexander's name." "Where's Alexander?" I asked, Does he know? I called him 30 minutes ago, Catherine said quietly. Told him he needed to come to your penthouse immediately. He should be here any minute. As if on cue, I heard the elevator. Rapid footsteps. Alexander burst through my door, his hair uncombed, wearing a wrinkled shirt like he'd just thrown on whatever was closest. Mom, I got a call from your attorney saying it was an emergency. What's going on? Why are there police here? Where's Natasha? He stopped when he saw Natasha in handcuffs. Someone, explain what's happening. Detective Rodriguez gestured to the sofa. Sir, you might want to sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want to know why my fiancé is being arrested in my mother's home. Catherine stepped forward. Alexander, your fiancé has been arrested for attempting to defraud your mother out of her penthouse. She used forged documents and a disbarred attorney to trick your mother into signing away her property. Alexander shook his head violently. No, that's not possible. Natasha was helping. Mom's been confused lately, forgetting things. Natasha was just trying to help her get organized. Alexander, I said softly. I have never been confused. That was a lie Natasha created to manipulate you. Mom, you called me 3 times asking the same question last week. I called you once. Once. Natasha lied to you about the other calls. What about the doctor's appointment you forgot with Catherine? There was no appointment. Natasha made that up too. I watched my son's face cycle through emotions. Confusion, denial, anger. Finally, a terrible understanding. Show him, I said to Taiwo. For the next 40 minutes, my son sat on my sofa and watched his life unravel. He saw the video of Natasha and Hansen tricking me into signing fraudulent documents. He saw the credit card statements for cards he'd never opened. He saw the loan documents with his forged signature. He saw text messages between Natasha and her sister, planning to take everything and disappear. He saw the messages where she called him boring, stupid, a means to an end. With each piece of evidence, I watched something break inside my son. This was a man who'd loved completely, trusted absolutely, and been betrayed in the cruelest possible way. When the videos finished, Alexander sat in silence. Then he stood up, walked to where Natasha was standing between the 2 detectives, and looked at her. Was any of it real? His voice was barely above a whisper. Did you ever love me at all? Natasha's mask finally fell away completely. Love? You want to talk about love? Your mother has $16 million and watches you struggle with a mortgage, while she lives in a penthouse overlooking the ocean. That's selfishness. I was trying to get what should have been yours anyway. By stealing it? By destroying my credit? By planning to accuse me of abuse and disappear? You were always going to be collateral damage, she said coldly. You're weak. You let your mother control everything. You were useful, but you were never the endgame. The money was always the endgame. I saw my son's face crumble. He turned to me, tears streaming down his face. Mom, what have I done? You fell in love with the wrong person, I said gently. It happens. I called you selfish. I let her convince me you were losing your mind. I stopped calling you, stopped visiting. I chose her over you. Yes, you did. He flinched at the truth. And now, I continued, you have a choice. You can spend the rest of your life feeling sorry for yourself. Or you can start fixing the damage. How? How do I fix any of this? Catherine handed him a folder. Start by reading this. It's a detailed accounting of every debt Natasha incurred in your name. $65,000 in loans, $48,000 in credit cards, $120,000 borrowed against your townhouse. You're responsible for all of it. Alexander's hands shook as he opened the folder. I don't have this kind of money. I'll be paying this off for years. Yes, you will, I said. No sympathy, no coddling, just truth. You'll pay every penny because they're your legal debts. I will not pay them for you. Mom, please. I can't afford this. You should have thought about that before you let a stranger drive a wedge between us, before you believed her lies about me. The detectives took Natasha away. She was still yelling, threatening to sue, claiming she was the victim. Her voice faded as the elevator doors closed. The silence in my penthouse was heavy. Alexander sank onto my sofa, holding the folder of his debts like it was a sentencing document. I've lost everything. You've lost a liar and a thief, I corrected. That's not losing everything. That's cutting out cancer. I've lost you. I sat down beside him, not close enough to touch, but close enough that he could see my face clearly. Alexander, I want you to understand something. I love you. You are my son, and I will always love you. But love doesn't mean I'll enable your self-destruction. Love doesn't mean I'll pay for your mistakes without you learning from them. You allowed yourself to be manipulated. You turned your back on your mother because a beautiful woman told you to. Those were your choices. How do I fix this? How do I make this right with you? First, I held up one finger. You pay your debts. Every single one. You work extra hours, you cut your expenses, you sell whenever you need to sell. You take responsibility. Second, you get therapy, real therapy, with a licensed psychologist. You need to understand how you let this happen, how you ignored every red flag. Third, you rebuild your relationship with me, not with gifts or grand gestures, with time, with honesty, with actual effort. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. How long will that take? He asked quietly. As long as it takes. Maybe months, maybe years. I don't know, and neither do you. Catherine gathered her files. Victoria, the DA's office wants your formal statement next week. They're confident they can convict Natasha on multiple felonies. She's looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. And Derek Hansen? They arrested him this morning. He's facing similar charges, plus practicing law without a license. With his prior record, he's looking at 8 to 12 years. After Catherine and Taiwo left, Alexander and I sat in my living room as the morning sun climbed higher, painting the ocean in brilliant blues. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. How did you know? When did you know Natasha was lying? I thought about that. I knew from the beginning. Not the details, but the pattern. I've spent 45 years catching people who steal. I know what it looks like. I know the questions they ask, the way they calculate, the way they position themselves. Natasha was textbook. Then why didn't you tell me? Would you have listened? He was silent. People in love don't want to hear negative things about their beloved. If I'd confronted you early, you would have thought I was jealous, controlling, trying to ruin your happiness. You would have pulled away even faster. So you let me stay with her? Let her hurt me? I let you make your own choices and face your own consequences. That's what adults do, son. I couldn't protect you from this. I could only make sure she didn't destroy both of us. He cried then. Deep, wrenching sobs. I let him. Sometimes pain is the only teacher that gets through. When he finally stopped, he wiped his face on his sleeve. What do I do now? You go home, you call a credit counselor, and start working on a payment plan for your debts. You find a therapist. And you call me next week to tell me how it's going. That's it? That's everything. He stood to leave, then turned back. Mom? Yes? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. Now prove it. Alexander left. I watched from my window as he got into his car and drove away. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not easy hope, not blind hope, but the realistic hope that maybe after all this, my son would finally grow into the man he was meant to be. The next 6 weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. Natasha's arraignment, where she pled not guilty despite overwhelming evidence. Derek Hansen's arraignment, where he tried to cut a deal by testifying against Natasha. Depositions, statements, meetings with prosecutors. But something else happened during those 6 weeks that I didn't expect. I got a call from a woman named Margaret Chen, no relation to my attorney Catherine, despite the same last name. Margaret was 73 years old, and she'd read about my case in the Los Angeles Times. The story had made the news. Forensic accountant outsmarts gold digger who tried to steal millions. "Mrs. Whitmore," Margaret said on the phone, her voice shaking, "I need your help. My daughter-in-law is doing to me exactly what that woman tried to do to you. I don't know who to call, who to trust. Please, can you help me?" I invited her to my penthouse. She came the next day, a tiny woman with white hair and frightened eyes, carrying a folder full of documents she didn't understand. Her son had married a woman 20 years younger. Within months, the woman had convinced Margaret she needed to update her will. Margaret had signed papers she thought were simple updates, but they were actually quitclaim deeds, transferring her house to her daughter-in-law's name. Margaret's son knew nothing about it. The daughter-in-law had forged his signature as a witness. I called Catherine. We took Margaret's case pro bono. Within a month, 2 more women contacted me. Then 5 more. Then 12. All of them were elderly women with assets. All of them had been targeted by relatives, caregivers, or supposed friends who tried to manipulate them into signing away their property. All of them had been told they were confused, incompetent, losing their minds. None of them were. They were just victims of a crime so common it has a name: financial elder abuse. And it happens to 500,000 people every year in the United States alone. I sat in my penthouse one evening, surrounded by folders of cases, and I realized something. I'd spent 45 years catching thieves for corporations. Maybe it was time to catch thieves for people who couldn't afford corporate forensic accountants. I called Catherine. "I want to start a foundation. Legal services for elderly victims of financial abuse. Free of charge. We'll fund it with donations and with my own money." "Victoria, that's an enormous undertaking." "I know, but I have the resources, the expertise, and apparently, I have the time. I'm 70 years old and I just outmaneuvered a career criminal. Imagine what I could do with a team." 3 months later, we opened the Whitmore Foundation for Elder Financial Protection. Catherine ran the legal side. I hired 2 other forensic accountants, both retired like me, both eager to use their skills for something meaningful. We partnered with adult protective services, law enforcement, and prosecutors' offices across California. In our first year, we helped 63 people recover over $40 million in stolen assets. Alexander kept his word. He worked with a credit counselor, set up payment plans for all his debts. He took a second job doing freelance architectural drawings on weekends. He cut his expenses to almost nothing, moved into a smaller apartment, drove his car until it literally died before buying a used replacement. He went to therapy every week for 18 months. He did the work, and slowly, painfully, we rebuilt our relationship. It started with phone calls. Every Sunday evening, 7 o'clock, he'd call, and we'd talk for 30 minutes. At first, the conversations were stilted, awkward. What do you say to your mother after you've betrayed her trust so completely? But gradually, the conversations became easier. He told me about his therapy sessions, not the private details, but the insights he was gaining. "I realized I was always looking for someone to tell me what to do," he said one evening. "First you, then my ex-wife, then Natasha. I never learned to trust my own judgment." "Are you learning now?" I asked. "I'm trying. It's harder than I thought. Every decision feels enormous." "That's because you're actually making decisions now, instead of letting someone else make them for you. It gets easier." 6 months after Natasha's arrest, Alexander asked if he could visit me. Not for dinner, just to see me, to talk in person. I said yes. He brought flowers, not expensive ones, just daisies from the grocery store. He'd remembered they were my favorite. We sat on my terrace, watching the sunset paint the ocean in gold and rose. I've been working with my therapist on this, and she said I should tell you when I was ready. I'm listening. When Dad died, I felt like I lost the only person who really understood me. You and I, we've always been different. You're strong, independent, decisive. I'm not those things. I'm creative and emotional, and I need connection. I always felt like I disappointed you by not being more like you. His words hit me like a physical blow. Alexander, I never wanted you to be like me. I wanted you to be yourself. I know that now. But I didn't know it then. So when Natasha came along and made me feel like I was enough, exactly as I was, I grabbed onto that. I ignored everything else, because finally someone was telling me I was good enough. Tears were running down his face. But she was lying. She didn't think I was good enough. She thought I was a fool she could use. And the person who actually loved me for exactly who I am, who worked her whole life to give me opportunities, who sacrificed everything for me, I pushed her away. I reached out and took his hand. You were manipulated by someone very skilled at manipulation. That doesn't excuse what I did. No, it doesn't, but it explains it. And you're doing the work to make sure it never happens again. We sat in silence for a while, holding hands, watching the waves. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think you'll ever fully forgive me? I thought carefully before answering. I don't think forgiveness is a single moment where everything is suddenly okay. I think it's a process. Every time you show up, every time you do what you say you're going to do, every time you make a good choice instead of an easy one, I forgive you a little more. We're not done with that process yet, but we're moving through it. How will I know when we're done? You'll know when you can look at yourself in the mirror and forgive yourself. When you can accept that you made mistakes and you've grown from them. When you stop punishing yourself for being human. Natasha's trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings, text messages, forged documents, testimony from Derek Hansen, who took a plea deal, testimony from her previous victims, who came forward after seeing her arrest in the news. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in state prison. Ms. Reynolds, the judge said at sentencing, you engaged in a calculated, cruel scheme to defraud a vulnerable woman of her life's work. Your complete lack of remorse, your attempts to blame the victim, and your history of similar conduct show that you are a danger to society. This sentence reflects the seriousness of your crimes. I was in the courtroom when the sentence was read. Natasha looked at me as they led her away in handcuffs. There was nothing left in her eyes but hate. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity, not anger. Just a sort of neutral acceptance that justice had been done. Alexander was there too. When it was over, we walked out of the courthouse together. How do you feel? He asked. Tired, I admitted. Ready for this chapter to be closed. Mom, I need to tell you something. I've been seeing someone. Dating. Her name is Jennifer. She's a middle school teacher. She has student loans and drives a 10-year-old Honda, and she splits the check on dates. She's the opposite of Natasha in every way. Do you love her? He considered the question seriously. I don't know yet, but I like her. I like who I am when I'm with her. And I'm taking it slow, really slow, because I need to make sure I'm seeing her clearly, not seeing what I want to see. He checks in with himself about his feelings, his needs. It's actually really healthy. They got married in a small ceremony on the beach. 50 people, nothing extravagant. Jennifer wore a simple dress she bought off the rack. Alexander wore a suit he already owned. They wrote their own vows. When Alexander said, I promise to be worthy of your love, to grow every day into a better man, to never stop working on myself. He was looking at Jennifer, but I felt those words too. At the reception, he gave a toast. I want to thank my mother, Victoria Whitmore. Most of you know she went through something really difficult because of choices I made. She could have walked away from me. She could have let me drown in my consequences. Instead, she loved me enough to let me fail, to let me hurt, to let me learn. And she loved me enough to be here when I was ready to do better. Mom, everything good in my life is because you refused to give up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Those were tears I'd been holding for years. The Whitmore Foundation grew. By year 3, we'd expanded to Arizona, Nevada, and Oregon. We'd helped over 200 people recover more than $150 million in stolen assets. We'd trained law enforcement across 4 states on recognizing and investigating financial elder abuse. We'd lobbied for stronger laws protecting elderly victims. I hired Margaret Chen, the first woman who called me for help. She became our outreach coordinator, talking to victim support groups, training bank employees to recognize the warning signs, speaking at senior centers. You saved my life, Margaret told me once. Not just my house, my actual life. I was so depressed after what my daughter-in-law did. I didn't want to keep living. But now I get up every day knowing I'm helping other people, that I'm part of something important. You gave me purpose. You gave yourself purpose, I corrected. I just opened a door. You walked through it. On my 75th birthday, Alexander and Jennifer threw me a party at my penthouse. My friends were there. Colleagues from my forensic accounting days. People from the foundation. My attorney Catherine. Investigator Taiwo. Even Marcus, the security guard, who'd called me that fateful morning. Alexander gave a speech. 5 years ago, I almost lost my mother to my own stupidity and someone else's greed. Today, I'm standing here married to an incredible woman, with a career I'm proud of, debts I've paid off, and a relationship with my mom that's stronger than it's ever been. The last 5 years have been hard. Really hard. But they've also been the most important years of my life. Because I finally grew up. I finally became the man my mother raised me to be. He raised his glass. To Victoria Whitmore, who taught me that love isn't about enabling bad behavior. It's about standing firm in your values even when it hurts. It's about letting people face consequences so they can learn and grow. It's about being strong enough to be kind, but also strong enough to say no. Mom, you're my hero. Everyone drank. I was crying again. Happy tears this time. Later, as the party wound down and people started leaving, Alexander and Jennifer stayed to help clean up. Mom, Alexander said as we packed away leftover food, Jennifer and I have some news. We wanted to tell you first. We're pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother. I froze. A grandmother. After everything, after all the pain and betrayal and healing, there would be new life, new hope, new chances. When? I managed to ask. 6 months. It's a girl. We're naming her Victoria, if that's okay with you. I couldn't speak. I just hugged them both and cried. That night, after everyone left, I stood on my terrace, watching the ocean, like I do every morning. But this time, it was night, and the water was black, except where the moon painted it silver. I thought about my life. 75 years. 45 years tracking down thieves. 8 years as a widow. 6 years dealing with a gold digger who tried to destroy my family. 5 years rebuilding with my son. And now, a granddaughter on the way. A foundation helping hundreds of people. A son who'd grown into a man I could be proud of. Had it been worth it? The pain, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, the tears. Yes, all of it. Because pain taught me things that comfort never could. It taught me that I was stronger than I thought. It taught me that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It taught me that justice is worth fighting for, even when you're scared. Most importantly, it taught me that it's never too late. Never too late to stand up for yourself. Never too late to demand respect. Never too late to start over. I was 70 when Natasha tried to steal my life. Most people would say I was too old to fight back. Too old to outmaneuver a younger, more desperate opponent. But I wasn't too old. I was exactly the right age. Because I had 70 years of experience. 70 years of learning. 70 years of building strength and wisdom and patience. And I used every single year of that experience to win. The foundation continues to grow. We're in 8 states now. We've helped over 500 people. We've trained thousands of bank employees, police officers, and adult protective services workers. We've lobbied for and passed stronger laws in 3 states. Every month I get letters from people we've helped. Elderly people who got their homes back, their savings back, their dignity back. One letter I keep on my desk is from an 82-year-old man named Robert. His nephew had convinced him to sign over his house, then kicked him out and put him in a cheap nursing home. We got his house back and had the nephew prosecuted. Robert wrote, "I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything, and there was nothing I could do because I was too old, too powerless. You showed me that age isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Thank you for giving me my life back." That's what this is about. Not revenge, not even justice, really. It's about showing people, especially older people, especially women, that we are not powerless, that we have value, that our years of experience are weapons, not vulnerabilities. Alexander and Jennifer's daughter, baby Victoria, is 3 years old now. She's brilliant and funny, and she calls me Mimi. Every Sunday they bring her to my penthouse. We have breakfast on the terrace, and I watch her chase seagulls and collect shells and ask a million questions about everything. She has no idea that her grandmother is a woman who took down a career criminal. She just knows that Mimi makes good pancakes and tells funny stories and lets her stay up past bedtime. That's enough. That's everything. Last month, Alexander asked me something surprising. "Mom, Jennifer and I have been talking. We want to start teaching Victoria about money, about independence, about being careful who you trust. We want her to grow up strong like you. Would you be willing to set up a financial literacy program through the foundation? Something for kids and teenagers?" You want me to teach children? I want you to teach them what you taught me. That money is a tool, not a goal. That independence is precious. That trust has to be earned. That it's okay to question, to verify, to protect yourself. I don't want Victoria to ever be vulnerable the way I was. So now the foundation runs youth financial literacy programs. We teach teenagers how to recognize financial manipulation, how to protect their credit, how to build independence. We teach them the warning signs of financial abuse so they can protect themselves and their families. It's become my favorite part of the work. These kids, 15, 16, 17 years old, they listen with wide eyes as I tell them stories. Not my story exactly, but versions of it. And I watch them understand that money isn't just about buying things. It's about power, about freedom, about protecting yourself. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. I'm 78 years old now. I still live in my penthouse. I still wake up before dawn and watch the sunrise with my jasmine tea. I still work at the foundation 3 days a week. My hands shake a little more than they used to. I move slower. I forget names sometimes, though never numbers. Numbers I remember forever. But I'm happy. Genuinely, deeply happy, in a way I'm not sure I've ever been before. Because I learned something in those dark months when Natasha was trying to destroy me. Happiness isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of purpose. My purpose used to be raising Alexander, then building my career. Then it was surviving widowhood. Then it was protecting myself from a predator. Now my purpose is helping others, teaching them, empowering them, showing them that age is not weakness, that experience is strength, that it's never too late to fight back. Last week, a 93-year-old woman came to our office. Her caregiver had been stealing her medication and selling it, then charging the woman for medication she never received. The woman was nearly destitute, despite having a pension that should have been more than enough. We got her situation fixed in 3 weeks. New caregiver, recovered funds, criminal charges filed. When we told her, she cried. I thought no one would believe me. I thought because I'm old, no one would care. Someone always cares, I told her. And you're never too old to matter. That's the truth I want people to understand. You're never too old to matter. You're never too old to fight. You're never too old to demand respect and dignity and justice. I think about Natasha sometimes. She's 4 years into her 8-year sentence. She'll be out in 4 more years if she behaves. She'll be 47 years old, with a criminal record, no assets, and the knowledge that she lost everything because she underestimated a 70-year-old woman. I don't hate her. I don't waste energy on hate, but I hope she learns something. I hope she understands that there are consequences for cruelty, that justice might be slow, but it's also thorough. Mostly, I hope she never gets the chance to hurt anyone else. Alexander has grown into the man I always hoped he'd become. He's a good husband, a loving father, a responsible adult who makes thoughtful decisions. He still calls every Sunday at 7. We still have breakfast together every week. The distance between us that Natasha created is gone, replaced by something stronger because it was rebuilt with intention and effort. Mom, he said to me last Sunday as we watched little Victoria play on the beach below my terrace, I've been thinking about something. You've built this incredible foundation. You've helped hundreds of people. You've changed laws. You've made a real difference in the world. But I never thanked you for the thing that mattered most. What's that? You saved me. Not just from Natasha, but from myself. You loved me enough to let me hit bottom. You loved me enough to make me climb back up on my own. If you'd rescued me, if you'd paid my debts and made everything easy, I'd still be that weak man who couldn't think for himself. Instead, I'm someone I'm proud to be. That's your gift to me. I squeezed his hand. You gave yourself that gift, Alexander. I just refuse to take it away from you. As I finish writing this, I'm sitting on my terrace. The sun is setting. The ocean is turning from blue to gold to pink. Little Victoria is staying over tonight, and she's inside with her coloring books, creating what she calls masterpieces to hang on my refrigerator. In 3 hours, I have a video call with our Nevada team. They're dealing with a complicated case involving a woman whose son's girlfriend convinced him to refinance his mother's house and give the girlfriend the money. It's exactly the kind of case we exist to solve. Tomorrow, I have a speech at a senior center in Orange County. I'll tell my story, the parts of it that matter for teaching purposes. I'll watch elderly faces light up with understanding, with recognition, with the knowledge that they're not alone. Next week, I'm testifying before the state legislature on a bill that would strengthen penalties for financial elder abuse. I'll sit in front of lawmakers and tell them why this matters, why we need stronger protections, why elderly people deserve justice. It's a full life, a purposeful life, a life that matters. And it almost didn't happen. If I'd given in to Natasha, if I'd let fear or exhaustion or self-doubt win, if I decided I was too old to fight. But I didn't give in. I used every skill I'd learned in 45 years of tracking down thieves. I planned, I documented, I waited, I struck at the perfect moment. And I won. Not just for me, for everyone who comes after me. For every elderly person who needs to know they have value, they have rights, they have the power to protect themselves. For my granddaughter, so she grows up knowing that her Mimi was a woman who fought back, who refused to be a victim, who turned pain into purpose. That's my legacy. Not $16 million in real estate and investments. Not even the foundation, though I'm proud of that. My legacy is showing people that strength doesn't fade with age. It evolves. It deepens. It becomes something sharper and more effective because it's tempered by experience. I'm 78 years old. My hair is silver. My knees hurt when it rains. But I am not weak. I am not vulnerable. I am not a victim. I am Victoria Whitmore. I am a forensic accountant, a mother, a grandmother, a fighter, a teacher. I am a woman who was targeted by a predator and turned the tables so completely that now I spend my days protecting others from the same fate. And if my story teaches you anything, I hope it's this. Never let anyone convince you that age makes you powerless. Never let anyone tell you that experience is a weakness rather than a strength. Never let anyone steal what you've built with your own two hands. And if they try, document everything, plan carefully, strike decisively. Use every year of your experience as a weapon, because dignity isn't something someone can take from you unless you let them. And I decided, that morning when I heard Natasha was at my door with movers and fraudulent documents, that I would never let anyone take my dignity again. I kept that promise to myself, and every day, through the foundation, through the people we help, through the lives we change, I help others keep that same promise. It's never too late. Not at 70, not at 80, not at 90. It's never too late to stand up, to fight back, to demand the respect and justice you deserve. Remember that. Whatever battle you're fighting, whatever betrayal you're facing, whatever pain you're enduring, remember, you are stronger than you think, you are wiser than your opponent expects, and you are never ever too old to win. That's the truth I hope every person who hears my story understands. The sun has set now. The ocean is dark, except for the lights from boats bobbing on the water. Little Victoria has fallen asleep on my couch, her coloring book open beside her, one hand still clutching a purple crayon. Tomorrow, the work continues. More victims to help, more predators to stop, more people to teach that they have power, they have value, they matter. But tonight, I'm just a grandmother watching her granddaughter sleep, grateful for second chances, grateful for hard-won wisdom, grateful for a life that almost ended in theft and betrayal, but instead transformed into purpose and meaning. I take one last sip of my now cold tea. I pull a blanket over Victoria's small sleeping form. I stand at my window, looking out at the endless ocean, and I smile. Because I won, not just against Natasha, but against the voice that whispered I was too old, too weak, too tired to fight. I won, and that makes all the difference.